Today is the third Sunday of Easter. Between Easter Sunday and Pentecost, we spend 50 calendar days celebrating the resurrection of Jesus from the dead in a special way. In our readings from Luke's Gospel today, we have a very clear account that Jesus' resurrection is not meant to be understood as a metaphorical or spiritual, but rather a physical manifestation. Jesus had been changed and was no longer confined by human limitations. Locked doors were not a hindrance to his appearance, but in the resurrection, he offered his hands and feet for examination, and at least as important, not only was he able to feel hunger, but he even sat down and ate fish with the disciples. As Christians, we believe these accounts and continue to spread this good news throughout the world. But I think it is important to not slip into the us versus them heresy that has haunted humanity throughout our history. Within the Christian Bible, and looking to today's first reading in particular, it is especially when it is stripped from its context, but also throughout the Passion narrative, there is what can be seen as an anti-Semitic tilt. Jesus was a Jew. Mary and Joseph were Jews. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of Joseph, and Salome were Jews. Peter, Paul, James, and John were Jews. And none of them ceased being Jews after the resurrection. They lived and died as Jews. But their teachings regarding the resurrected Jesus, and Jesus' divinity were seen as blasphemous by other Jews, including family members and loved ones. Like LGBTQ plus youth and young adults who are rejected by their families and religious communities today, early Christians were thrown out and at times subjected to violence by those they loved the most. And so, throughout our Christian scriptures, the resentment, anger, and pain of this rejection is felt as an undercurrent. It would be wrong to say that the New Testament is anti-Semitic, but we need to be careful in how we read it, because it can, and too often has, been interpreted through an anti-Semitic lens. For those of us who reject outright anti-Semitism, there is a no less pernicious tendency to turn an ancient heresy of dualism when reading the Christian scriptures of the New Testament and the Hebrew scriptures of the Old Testament. That is, we read the Hebrew scriptures as being about a vengeful, nativist, and relentless God, and the Christian scriptures as being about a loving, universalist, and forgiving God made manifest in Jesus Christ. But when we do this, we miss the point and fall into heresy. Both the Christian and Hebrew scriptures are about the same loving and forgiving God, but both are interpreted through the minds, words, and writings of flawed human beings who are subject to their own cultural and personal biases and prejudice. And I think this is the most important lesson we as Christians can take from today's readings. God is God, and we are not. God is universally loving, but we as human beings carry with us prejudices which we may or may not be aware of or willing to acknowledge. But regardless, they exist, and they will impact how we understand our reality and interpret one another's actions and words. I think over the past year, many of us have become more aware of our own unconscious biases. This past week, Pat Robertson, hardly known for his outspoken Black Lives Matter activism, made the argument that while Daunte Wright lived an imperfect life, he did not deserve to die for an air freshener hanging from his rearview mirror, and that a veteran officer should be able to distinguish between a bright yellow, relatively light plastic taser on one hip and the black, heavier steel gun on the other, if that officer was going to carry a gun. And while some have pointed to the gun that was found behind a fence as justifying the police actions in Chicago, many more of us have seen in the killing of Adam Toledo, a 13-year-old boy, in need of help and guidance, with his empty hands in the air being shot down. And we look to so many young white men and teenagers who have been arrested without being injured by police after committing mass shootings. And in all of this, we see the need to make the love of Christ and the peace of Christ that was offered to those first disciples on that Easter day 2 millennia ago manifest in our own world today. To acknowledge our own humanity and faults that can lead us down the path of prejudice and hate, but also the light of Christ within each of us that can lead us to truth and love. A light that allows us to see the resurrection Jesus made manifest within ourselves and also in all the people everywhere, whatever their religion or lack thereof. Amen.